Hello, my name is Will Hathaway. I'm a meteorologist from Austin, Texas. I am here today to talk about how to protect your students from severe heat and related illnesses by utilizing the wet bulb globe temperature instead of the heat index. This chart shows the 5 types of heat-related illnesses as classified by the CDC. Heat rash, the least severe, sunburn, heat cramps, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. The chart shows the symptoms of each on the left and the recommendations for treating each on the right. The CDC recently changed the standard definition of heat stroke to use a core body temperature of 105 instead of 103. It is important to know that heat stroke requires immediate 911 attention. If heat stroke is not treated immediately, it can lead to severe brain damage and even death. Most people think that floods are the leading cause of weather-related fatalities in the United States, but this is not true. The leading cause of weather-related fatalities is heat. In 2018, there was 108 fatalities related to severe heat in the United States. So how does this compare to other years? Historically, over the last 22 years, there have been 2,923 fatalities related to heat in the United States. As you can see in the chart, there are spikes in fatalities which correspond to widespread severe heat events. So where do these fatalities occur? The National Weather Service has tracked the locations of these heat-related fatalities over the last 22 years. Of the 2,900 recorded fatalities, 18% have occurred outdoors. This includes outside open areas, ball fields, camping, and golfing. It is important to note that this percentage could be higher since 16% of the overall historic fatalities are undetermined. However, heat-related fatalities in homes still remain the #1 location historically. Since we are located in Texas, how does Texas compare? During the same historical time period, there were 332 heat-related fatalities in Texas. You can see similar spikes in fatalities which correspond to severe heat events here in Texas. While most fatalities occur inside homes without adequate cooling, 23% of the heat-related fatalities over this 22-year period in Texas occurred outdoors. So what can be done to prevent future fatalities? First, monitor the temperature, exposure time, and hydration during events and practice. This is especially important for students, athletes, marching band participants, and anyone outdoors. Second, make decisions on outdoor activities based on the National Weather Service excessive heat alerts and heat indices. These indices include heat index and the wet bulb globe temperature. In addition, have a heat safety plan in place and be ready to act upon it when necessary. This graphic shows the National Weather Service definitions for excessive heat alerts. They are color-coded to show severity, with excessive heat warnings and heat advisories requiring immediate action. The excessive heat warning and heat advisory are issued 12 hours in advance of extremely dangerous heat conditions. Excessive heat watches are issued 1 to 3 days in advance, and excessive heat outlooks are issued 3 to 7 days in advance. When an excessive heat watch or outlook is issued, you should consult your heat safety plan and prepare for the event so you have adequate lead time. As you get closer to the event, it is important to monitor the heat indices. The National Weather Service defines heat index as a measure of how hot it really feels when the relative humidity is factored in with the actual air temperature. The wet bulb globe temperature, WBGT, is a measure of the heat stress in direct sunlight, which takes into account temperature, humidity, wind speed, sun angle, and cloud cover. Let's look at the two indices. This slide shows the mathematical formulas for both. As you can see, the heat index is a very complicated calculation with several environmental constants. These constants are based on ideal conditions and assumptions made, such as the average height and weight of a person, amount of clothing worn, core temperature, sweat evaporation rate, etc. The wet bulb globe temperature equation in comparison is relatively simple. While sensitive to small changes in weather variables, it can also be used indoors to calculate heat stress. Heat index is a measure of how hot it feels to the human body. It is based on measurements taken at a weather station in the shade with light wind, but this may not be relevant to your local conditions. Heat index can be up to 15 degrees higher in direct sunlight. In comparison, the wet bulb globe temperature is a measurement taken at your location in direct sunlight. It is more comprehensive than heat index because it is meant for physical activity and includes more weather variables. So what do these indices tell us? The National Weather Service Heat Index caution chart shows the degree of caution needed at a specific temperature and humidity levels. These temperatures will give you an estimate of what it feels like outside. However, it does not give you any specific recommendations to follow. Instead, it shows the likelihood of heat-related illnesses to occur at a specific temperature. In comparison, the wet bulb globe temperature chart shows specific recommendations based on the wet bulb globe temperature and activity level. The wet bulb globe temperature can change quickly, so it is important to measure it every 30 minutes to an hour as it is sensitive to small changes in weather variables. This chart is used by OSHA and the United States military for extreme heat planning. It shows the amount of work to rest ratio based on heat risk as well as the amount of water intake needed. However, this chart is not focused on student activities outside. The National Athletic Trainers Association worked with the Corey Stringer Institute of Yukon to create these recommendations using 3 regions called categories. This chart is based on the previous chart from OSHA, and it shows specific activity guidelines based on the wet bulb globe temperature for each category. As the categories increase, the threshold for each color level changes. While it primarily focused on football, it does include recommendations for all other sports. These recommendations should be used as guidelines for other outside activities. The previous chart showed different categories for heat safety. A football player practicing in Texas in 90 degrees could be comfortable, but a football player in the same conditions in Maine would be experiencing the worst heat conditions of all year. As you can see, these categories are not tied to specific states or geographic regions. For an example, Pennsylvania, California, and Ohio are partially in each of the 3 categories, and Texas is in 2. This shows the importance of measuring the local wet bulb globe temperature and knowing the category your location is in. The wet bulb globe temperature has been recommended by several organizations. These include the University Interscholastic League in Texas, which is the governing body for all student extracurricular activities, OSHA, the National Athletic Trainers Association, all branches of the United States military, the International Standards Organization, and the states of South Carolina and New Jersey. South Carolina requires all schools to have a handheld wet bulb globe temperature meter at all athletic events. New Jersey just passed a law requiring all schools to have wet bulb globe temperature meters on hand at events and practices. These meters can be obtained from different manufacturers at different price points. Some meters include more features than others. I recommend meters that include wind measurements since the wet bulb globe temperature can be affected by wind speed and direction changes. If a wet bulb globe temperature meter cannot be obtained, an estimation of the wet bulb globe temperature can be calculated by using this chart. It is important to note that this is not a feel-like temperature like the heat index. Therefore, the wet bulb globe temperature may be lower than the actual air temperature or heat index. It should be noted that this chart assumes full sunshine, no clouds, and light winds when calculating the wet bulb globe temperature. This is an estimation and is not as accurate as measuring the wet bulb globe temperature from a device. Either way, both must be used in conjunction with the wet bulb globe temperature recommendation chart previously shown to make heat safety plan decisions. In conclusion, to prepare for outdoor activities, develop a heat safety plan and review it regularly. You must be willing to act on the plan. Communication between decision makers and those supervising students outdoors is critical. Be sure to measure the wet bulb globe temperature every 30 minutes at the location of the activity and provide adequate hydration. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you today. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me. My contact information is listed on the slide.